Okay, welcome to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. Brian will be here for both hours. His movie thing was canceled. We're going to have Mike Tenay from NWA TNA, their television announcer. He'll be up in about 15 minutes. We're also going to be joined later in the show by Frank Shamrock, who just came out of retirement, so to speak, and won his first match about 2 weeks ago. So we got a loaded show. We got a full bank of phone calls. Of course, we're here every Sunday night for 2 hours from 8 to 10 Eastern Time. Brian, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good.
That's good. Brian, real quick, why don't you let everyone know about the deal that you were working on yesterday?
Well, it's some sort of documentary that is being shot about how hard wrestling is. And actually, everybody involved with it didn't really know, and still doesn't actually know, what this thing is going to be. But we had an actor there who had never done any real pro wrestling training, but knew how to take some bumps. And so we filmed some squash matches with this man and just beat him up. And that was that. I mean, we didn't really beat him up, which kind of made me wonder what the point of this documentary was. But anyway, I guess it was in a cage, and Tim slammed the cage door on his head like many famous angles in the past, and unfortunately this time his ear really got busted open, so today got canceled. Okay.
This was an interesting week, and I guess the most interesting thing was more SmackDown than Raw, I'm thinking, even though they did some big angles on Raw with Jim Ross quitting, with Rock and Bill Goldberg. Kevin Nash returned. Bill Goldberg and Chris Jericho, which was not an angle after the show, which they had a little skirmish. But SmackDown, they had the return of Roddy Piper. And to me, I was expecting far worse. I thought that was actually pretty good. But the idea of him being there every week, I think that, it's one of those things where, I don't know how many weeks in a row Lightning is going to strike where it is good. And we also had the John Cena-Undertaker match. And when that match was over, I had lost total and complete whatever little bit of confidence I had, which wasn't a lot, in the creative decision-making, and just the structure of WWE went right out the window watching the John Cena-Undertaker match, because it was like, they don't get it.
Well, when I was watching the show, Sable came back, and then Roddy Piper came back, and then you had this Undertaker-John Cena main event where the point was to sort of, get Cena over as a guy who might be challenging for the world title in 2 weeks, since obviously the winner of him and Benoit gets that shot. And what did they do? They had Undertaker just completely destroy him, and the only way he did a job was to be beaten by 4 men. And when it was over, that and the Roddy and the Sable just made me realize that Vince has absolutely zero faith in his ability to create a new star, and it's just completely given up, and that's what that was.
Yeah, and then the whole first part of the show, it just seemed like, every segment was Hogan, who wasn't there, but Hogan, Vince, Roddy Piper, Sable, the whole first hour, it seemed like.
Yeah, and Vince's replays with stuff that Vince...
Well, that's the whole point, the replay after replay of, Vince McMahon stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's always Vince. Vince gets more attention than anybody else, and he's not a wrestler, and he's old, and I don't know.
Trivia question's not easy either, although I think it's easier than last week's. And the winner gets a free copy of PlayStation 2's Def Jam Vendetta, which features DMX, Ludacris, Method Man, Redman, Scarface, and more. All kinds of your favorite rap stars in professional wrestling matches, which probably wouldn't be something Vince Russo wouldn't mind doing. It. You can just take anyone.
Don't give them any ideas.
Yeah, well, they couldn't afford these guys, so I'm not giving them any ideas that they haven't thought of, but they just can't afford to do anyway. But anyway, here's the question. And today, so I'll give you one of the names right now. Today, Great Sasuke was elected to the Japanese Diet, which is their equivalent of the Senate. He's the 4th professional wrestler to win election. In fact, 2 of them are in it right now. So our trivia question is, name all 4 of those wrestlers that are in the Japanese hierarchy in politics, and you have to name at least one other wrestler who ran for office and failed to win. So,
and for bonus points,
yes,
name the 2 wrestlers who are about to wrestle each other.
Well, they're going to have to get that one easy anyway.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah, you can name the 2 that are about to have a match against each other for the first time, and it's only in a couple weeks. I think it's on May 3rd. May 3rd, I think, is the date of that match. So anyway, that's our trivia question, and there's something that I was going to ask you about. Okay, we were talking about SmackDown. What were your thoughts as far as Roddy Piper went?
Like you said, I thought it came off better than I expected it to. The one thing was it was so weird. Like, he came out and first him and Vince were friends, and then they hated each other, and then they were friends, and then they hated each other. And it was so funny watching the crowd because, they loved Roddy, and then he mentioned he hated Hogan, and they booed him. Then he mentioned he hated Vince, and they cheered him, and then he hit Rikichi with a coconut, and they booed him, and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, this guy's turned 4 times in one segment.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Now I got a question. Who goes over, if you're doing it, who goes over, Cena or Benoit on Tuesday?
I think that I would put over Cena.
Would you?
Because I think that Benoit and Brock could be something that they could do and build up as being something really big. And I really wouldn't want to see that first match with 1 week of build, which is what it would get.
I would pick Benoit because I think that they've. My feeling is that the match last week already destroyed Cena and no one cares. And at least with Benoit and Brock, no matter what you do,
you're going
to have a good match. With Brock and Cena, where Cena is not thought of by the fans as being competitive, you might have a match that's going to hurt both Lesnar and Cena at the same time. I think Lesnar and Benoit won't hurt either guy.
Yeah.
So that's my pick. Anyway, okay, we've got Mike Tenay on the line. Mike, we're gonna go to a call first. Okay, we're gonna go to John in Savannah, Georgia first. John, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not too much.
I had a couple questions for you.
Okay.
The first one I wanted to ask was about how long is Jim Ross going to be kept off TV, and I have to listen to Coach do the play-by-play on Raw?
It's not definite. I'm thinking that it will probably be the Monday after the pay-per-view or the week after that, because this is what I figure. I figure that Raw, they feel that Rocky can carry Raw until the pay-per-view. And then once Rock is off the pay-per-view, they need Austin back in the worst way. So I'm figuring that's probably the 28th. And when Austin comes back, Ross comes back.
Okay.
So that's just my guess. I mean, that's all just a guess. I don't really know.
Okay. And my other question, I have a couple more. My first one, though, is I want to know a little bit more about the Jericho Goldberg incident that happened, I guess, after Raw went off the air.
They had an argument, and then they had. It wasn't really a fight. I mean, but
a couple punches thrown or whatever.
There were no punches thrown.
No punches thrown.
No.
They had a hockey skirmish.
No, because hockey skirmishes are usually holding and hitting. They kind of just went to the ground. Jericho grabbed Goldberg in the front face, and they were pulled apart very quickly. And when they were pulled apart, they had a few words, and they ended up shaking hands. So that's what happened. But I mean, the whole thing was Jericho. Jericho got word of something that Bill said about Jericho earlier in the night, and Jericho confronted Bill about it, and they ended up arguing and yelling and screaming, and kind of broke down real quick. So that's what happened.
My other question I had was about Nathan Jones, and I guess you watched SmackDown, so you caught his match on.
Yeah.
Are there any plans that Vince has at any time of possibly sending him to OVW or doing something with him, just because he is, I don't know, he's so green and.
Well, I mean, we said that before they even signed him, and I haven't heard any plans have changed because it would be an admission of being wrong, and it really is tough to do that. But I mean, put it this way: if I heard tomorrow that he's being sent to OVW, I wouldn't be surprised because I sure would do it.
Right. Okay. And my other question is, what are they doing with Tenacious D? Are there any plans for him?
Actually, he's supposed to start next month.
On SmackDown?
Oh, that I don't know. I mean, it was originally SmackDown, but that was when Paul Heyman was doing the writing on SmackDown. When I think that everyone kind of forgot about him during that, writers change.
Right.
And so now I think he could go either way. Now I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't think that they have any ideas of what to do with him, but I guess time will tell.
Okay. Who's he referring to?
Tenacious Z.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike, can you hear me?
Hey, Dave.
Hey there.
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much.
Great to talk with you guys again.
Now, can you hear the callers?
I could not while I was on hold there for the last minute or so. I could hear you talking, but I could not hear the callers.
Oh, this is going to be a good show. Now, Brian, can you hear the callers?
No, I can hear him.
I can hear Brian, however.
Okay, well that's good.
Halfway there.
Okay, well then we should. This is going to be an interesting hour.
Oh, what the heck? We can we probably could talk about wrestling for an hour or so. I think we probably.
We do that all the time. Now, Jonathan, do you have any questions before we go?
No, that's about it.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got Mike Tenay of NWA TNA here. Mike, how are you?
Hey, Dave. Hey, Brian. It's great to join you guys once again. And Dave, it was great to see you. Boy, I'm trying to think. I guess it's been a couple of years since I've seen you in person.
No, it hasn't been that long.
Hasn't it been at least a year? Wow, WCW was still going, wasn't it?
No, you came for a card convention or something when you did the speech in San Francisco, remember?
Okay, that was a year and a half ago, September.
Wow, so it's been that long.
So a year and a half. Anyway, this past Saturday, the Cauliflower Alley Club reunion in Las Vegas, and I guess, looking back when I was reading all the reviews on the event, the one thing that jumped out at me was your one line about that it had been years since you had attended one of those events. I think probably back to the days in Studio City in
Yeah, the last one I went to was in Studio City.
And I just think that the last couple of years that I don't know. There were points, I'm sure, in the show this past Saturday where it may have lagged a little bit, but I think we try and move them along a little bit quicker than they did in the past.
Oh, that's for sure. I remember some of those in the past.
Your line was, "It's been years since I've attended one of these events, but it won't be years until I go back again." And,
I'm going next year for sure.
Brian, I think really as close as you are geographically to Las Vegas, boy, just to be able to be there and to soak up the knowledge that's available and to look around that room and see Harley Race and Jack Briscoe and Mad Dog Vachon and John Tolis, Buddy Roberts from the Freebirds, guys, you can just go on. And afterwards they interviewed me for, I guess, what is going to be a release of a DVD or a videotape of the event. And the one thing that really struck home was that I think so many of the young wrestlers should be there, not just to pick up the sense of history and tradition, which would be great if they did, but to be able to pick the brain of some of these veterans that were there. I know that I spent, probably an hour or two talking to Buddy Roberts of the Freebirds and just, trying to picture if I was a wrestler trying to get inside his mind and all the tag team psychology that he learned with the Years of the Birds and the Hollywood Blondes. You really just couldn't put a price tag on that kind of an education that you can get in one weekend.
Yeah, I pretty much for sure am going to go next year. In fact, I really regret not going this year after hearing from a ton of people who just had a great time there. So,
I do think that, one of the things about Cauliflower Alley, and it was better this year because a lot of the West Coast independent guys were there. And not just West Coast, because Les Thatcher brought some people in, Harley Race brought some people in. So there were a lot of younger wrestlers, a lot of older wrestlers. It was kind of lacking in the in-between age wrestlers, I kind of thought.
Yeah, I think that has been the case for years, and I think a lot of that has to do with, some of those middle-aged wrestlers are still employed. And I think the other factor that you take into account is a lot of the middle-aged wrestlers can't look in the mirror and say that their careers are over. They can't take that last step, that final.
Yeah, but you don't have to be a retired wrestler to be there.
You don't have to, but I think in most instances that's usually the way things go, and I think so many of the guys that maybe haven't been in the business for the past year or so just look at going to Cauliflower Alley as being an admission that their careers are over and they can't make that final step. They can't cut that final cord. So I think what you get is you get the young kids that we certainly had there, and then you get, like you mentioned, that next generation, that previous generation past that middle-aged wrestler group that's in attendance.
I was working on Part 3 of the history of the WWF. It will be coming out. It'll be mailed out this coming Wednesday for those of you who are subscribers, and it's even bigger than Part 2, and it's scary, and I'm not even done with it yet.
And can I say that if you have any sense of history or you care at all about the history of the wrestling business, and finding out maybe years later some of the behind-the-scenes details and political maneuverings that went on, there's really, I don't think, been anything that has been as concise and in one package as what you've done in the past month or so, almost to the point where I think what you have there is on your hands is a book detailing the history of that championship. And I know in speaking to some of the wrestlers at the NWA TNA show this past Wednesday, so many of them were learning an awful lot about the history of the wrestling business by reading those articles. So to say that those are a must-read, I think, is probably an understatement.
Well, thank you. And this is the Part 3 is going to be the first Hulk Hogan championship reign. And the two things from going through all the stuff that really hit me is that, a lot of times, there's a lot of romanticism about the past and things like that. And Hulk Hogan was a bigger television star, if you look at the numbers, than Steve Austin ever was. But night after night drawing card, actually Steve Austin beats Hulk Hogan out by a lot. And looking back at the different shows and everything like that, Hulk Hogan had sellouts, but he didn't have consistent sellouts at any point. Other than the Orndorff run. But that's one super feud. That's like Bruno Sammartino with Larry Zbyszko or something like that. I mean, Austin, when he was on top during that couple-year period, and even when he was injured and Rock was carrying the ball, so to speak, they did phenomenal. They did business, far beyond what that company or what anyone in wrestling has ever done. Because really,
do you think that was mostly because of Austin?
At first it was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not, once the momentum was going, no, then it was the momentum of the company. But, it was pretty clearly it was Austin and, Austin and Vince McMahon, the whole dynamic that got that momentum going. Just like, if you go back to that 84 through 1988, 1990, whatever that period, it wasn't all Hulk Hogan, but if you had to name one guy, the guy you name is Hulk Hogan.
Well, like you said, there were shows where if Hogan was not there was a noticeable difference in attendance.
Yeah.
So that meant a lot.
Yeah. But, in the big cities, not as much as I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when they look at that and they see how things really did shake out, and the fact that when you do look at those numbers, that Austin had a substantial edge over Hogan, right? I mean,
It was substantial. I'll give you an example. It's like, here the first year, Hogan was consistently doing about 10,000 people in San Francisco, Oakland. But then I looked at, what Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka were doing, and they were doing the same 10,000, against each other. So it wasn't as big a deal as I had remembered it, and as a lot of people had remembered it. Don't get me wrong, when they were doing 3 tours, and you had the tour that was headlined by Hogan, and then you had the tour that was headlined by Dusty Rhodes, the C-Team tour, one would do 8,000 people and one would do 4,000. That was pretty significant. But at the same time, when Austin was doing the A tour, and then you had the B tour with, let's say, Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho, that was also a pretty significant difference. So.
And you look back over the history of those 2 eras, and you can judge it on those hard numbers, attendance figures, and ratings and the like. Just one other thing that I want to throw out: when you look at the mainstream media attention of those 2 eras.
The second era far more than the first.
Oh my goodness, not even close.
Not even close.
I lived it, and certainly in that Hogan era, gosh, I remember the Sports Illustrated.
However, that's right. Hogan did have a Sports Illustrated cover, and Austin never got anything like that.
Okay, so you've just named one. However, if you were to look at the entire amount of mainstream media coverage for the Hogan era as opposed to the Austin era, trust me, it is close.
Well, think about it. How many TV guide covers were there? There must have been 4 different TV guide covers, one of which was for WCW during this late 80s era, and they never had. Hogan had a little inset in among like 50 people or 20 people, the 20 most influential, TV stars of the 90s. I believe it was the 80s actually. So that was the closest thing to a cover he got, sharing it with all those people. In the 90s, you had how many different wrestlers got TV guide covers? The frickin' Nitro Girls got a TV guide cover.
Think of the stories that the USA Today had in the Austin era. I can remember living it, and there had to be a run there of a year-plus period where you could not go more than a day or 2 without some kind of a wrestling-related story in USA Today.
Yeah. So, overall, yeah, But, they're the one thing, though, and that is the Pontiac Silverdome show. And it's one of the things is like people go, well, Hogan and Andre did that. But, if Rock and Austin were wrestling at the Pontiac Silverdome instead of at the Astrodome, it would have been the exact same number of people. If this year's WrestleMania, without even a strong main event and which did not do that great on pay-per-view, if that show, instead of being booked in Seattle, was booked at the Pontiac Silverdome, it was still going to sell out. That's just the nature of the business now, I think. Anyway.
Have to admit that I really enjoyed that WrestleMania pay-per-view, particularly the last hour and a half, I guess you would say, whatever the last 3+ matches, and had a chance to watch it with Bobby Heenan, who, has a pretty critical eye towards the wrestling business today, and not necessarily very effusive in his praise towards much of what goes on in the ring, and God, he was pretty much blown away by the last 3-4 matches on that show, and in particular the Lesnar Angle match, and I have to agree as well. And although I have to admit, I watched a match earlier today that, from a drama standpoint, boy, certainly holds up to just about anything that I've seen in an awful long time, and that was the March 1 Kenta Kobashi Mitsuharu Misawa match from Japan. Just phenomenal.
Yeah, Brian, have you seen that match yet?
No, not yet.
That match is incredible.
It's one to go out of your way, really, to get a tape and take a look at that match because, boy, I don't know, it just brought back so many memories of watching previous battles involving those two guys, and God, the crowd reactions, you could not have scripted better crowd reactions from even before the opening bell until probably 5-10 minutes after the final bell.
A good 10 minutes after the match was over, yeah.
Non-stop. The crowd reaction was pretty electric.
Yeah. The other thing about that is, there's things that are like, and one example is, the Hogan body slam of Andre that we're going to be seeing as long as Vince McMahon has a wrestling promotion. We'll be watching that clip, and it has become a magic moment. That suplex, that tiger suplex that Misawa gave Kobashi to the floor, in Japanese wrestling history will be the same thing.
And, I guess if you probably saw, I'm trying to think how high that ramp probably is off the ground.
A couple of feet.
A couple of feet is all.
Yeah.
But the way that they shot that, too, which was something that I noticed, they never went back to show you that all things considered, yeah, the bump was spectacular in the way that he took the suplex off the ramp, but it really wasn't. I mean, the sell job, I guess is what I'm trying to say, was so much more important to that spot than just about anything.
Now, watching that match, the one thing about that match that I think made it, and I've watched that match now a couple of times, and it's actually a weird thing because it gets better every time you see it because you start noticing little things, and in those little things you really see how good it was. But the key to that match is not the moves, although there were some great moves, but in both cases, with both guys, the selling of the moves.
Absolutely, and maybe in looking back at it, Misawa was almost fortunate that he busted his chin on that safety rail because that just added to the dramatic aspects and elements of the match even more. In fact, that it occurred probably, I'm going to think, maybe 6-7 minutes in, of a 30-plus minute match, and just made it even all the more dramatic. But, yeah, you're right, it was. And again, even with that suplex spot off the ramp, to me it was the selling of the move as opposed to the move itself that really brought it home.
Okay, we are going to go to the calls, and you guys let me know if you can hear because hopefully we've had this thing fixed. We're going to Jeffrey in New York City. Jeffrey, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a question for you, actually, all three of you. If you have any...
Hold on, now, can you guys both hear this?
No.
Not at all.
Okay, well then, that doesn't do much good. Okay, give me the question and...
you can relate to them. My question is, where the hell has Blitzkrieg gone?
Blitzkrieg is living in Southern California, and I think he's working, for computers or something. He quit wrestling cold turkey, which is amazing because nobody does that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He reminds me a lot of Amazing Red, and actually Amazing Red I think is a little bit overrated. I thought Blitzkrieg was actually a lot better than him. But that's actually kind of weird that you say that. My other question is, actually, this is my last question. I only have two questions. Triple H. I can't understand. I've been reading a lot of analysis about him, and I just cannot understand how he does not see that he's hurting the company,
It's first of all, I think that people, when I don't think that people, a lot of times, especially wrestlers that are so into their own character, I don't think that a lot of times they see the big picture because they're so caught in their own world, and so he's trying to do the best things for his own career, which aren't necessarily the best things for the company, and that's not that unusual. It's just that he has, the power that, very few wrestlers historically have ever had. That's the difference.
Talk about Hunter.
Yeah. Oh, we were definitely talking about Hunter, yes.
It's just unbelievable that, what the hell is going on with Stone Cold? I mean, I remember, I was reading about how he, kicked him out of the production meetings and everything.
Hunter doesn't have to be in the production meetings. His eyes and ears are on the production meetings.
No, since Stone Cold came back in the Rock, hasn't Triple H lost some power?
No, not at all. How can you lose power when the head writer is your future wife and the owner of the company is your future father-in-law? He's not going to lose any power. It's not going to happen.
Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah. Plus, the other thing is we talk about Rock and Austin. Rock's going to be gone in a couple of weeks, and Austin's not going to be wrestling again, so... Of all the guys there, in the eyes of the hierarchy, he's the biggest star in the company. Whether you think he is or not, the people who run the company think he's the biggest star that's there full time. Put it that way. So, which is a problem. Mike, I wanted to ask you, as we talk about, a lot, how goes the WWE pretty much is how goes the view of the important people in professional wrestling. And one of the things, again, in the history story that I was working on, it's not winning the battle among wrestling fans is very, very important. There's no question about it. But it's not as important as winning the battle among television programmers. Because television programmers are the one who ultimately, whether it's Japan or here, are going to determine what your time slot is, when you're on, and what kind of a outlet you have. And if you have a great product and a great time slot, you can go to the moon. If you have a terrible product and a good time slot, you're not going to do very well. But if you have the greatest product in the world and no time slot, you're very limited where you can go. And with NWA TNA, and, you're in a tough road, and a lot of people are in a tough road because there is that perception that wrestling is the 2-3-year-old fad on its way down, and the WWE numbers, week by week, every kind of new number we get in seems to constantly confirm that, wow, this is a very disappointing period.
Yeah, it makes it very difficult for an organization like ours, and so many times people will ask me, don't you wish that you could put the WWE out of business? Don't you wish that
shouldn't even be your concern.
That the WWE's ratings and buy rates go to hell. And you know what? It's the exact opposite. Because, like you mentioned, the magic word, perception. Perception from the decision makers, which are those television executives. And I guess I've talked about this with so many people, but the television executives, for the most part, are sheep. They follow the trends.
We used to go to those things, and remember, like, one year a show would get hot to the NATPE convention in Vegas. And the next year we would go, and there'd be 500 shows, not really 500, but 20 shows exactly the same as that one-off show.
And just look what's happened in the television business in the past 3 or 4 years.
With the reality shows.
Well, even before that. When the game shows. When Millionaire was hot,
yeah,
everybody had a game show.
Yeah.
Remember
the talk shows, the different type of sitcoms, yeah, whenever something gets hot, everyone tries to copy it.
Right. So at this point in time, as far as NWA TNA is concerned, we're looking for that one TV executive, that one decision maker that can see outside the box, that can possibly be the one person that says, this product is good enough here where there are so many wrestling fans that have tuned out in the past couple of years. And those fans, I think, are still available to a certain extent. The problem is, at this point in time, the only measuring stick, really, that they have are the falling ratings and the falling buy rates of the WWE. So that's really what we're looking for as far as NWA TNA is concerned, is that one executive that sees that this is an alternative product that I think, in the right situation, given a chance, has an opportunity to succeed. And at least that's my thought, and maybe I'm too close to the product, so I guess I'd almost like to hear, your guys' thoughts if I'm overstating the case.
Well, do you think you guys are any closer now than you were when you first began?
Well, I think just from the mere fact, Brian, that we've put 40 weeks of programming up. And think if you're a television executive in June of last year. We're a totally unknown entity at this point. But now that you can look at that number and, when you look at the years and years of programs that WCW put out, it doesn't sound like much in comparison. But when you think about putting 40 weeks of TV in a row, I think it shows that that there is now a product, and we're not just somebody that's going to be like an XWF that's going to come in and do one day's worth of tapings and maybe a couple of house shows here or there and then just fade away.
I got a question, and to me, this is probably going to be, if it happens the way that they're planning it, this is going to be probably one of the biggest stories of the year in wrestling, and that is the WWE's attempt to split brand their pay-per-views in June. And I don't know, Mike, do you think that when it comes to May that they're going to sit there and go, you know what, we can't do this? Or do you think that they're going to try and fail or even try and succeed?
I think if cooler heads prevail and they can sit back and actually take a look at their product right now and see the direction that it's headed in, then I think that there's no chance that we will ever get to that split brand pay-per-view idea come June. And I think if they do head in that direction, then I think we'll just see a continuing erosion of the numbers both on TV and on the pay-per-views.
Brian, what do you?
Is it possible for them to do a split brand correctly?
I don't think by splitting into two shows.
So even if they did everything, if they split
everything, right, Brian? What have they done? Ever since they've done the split, all we do is talk about that they're not doing hardly.
Here it is.
Well, just like week by week, they do everything wrong. If you and I were setting out and go, this is how we do a split, they're like violating every one of those premises, the basic premises, every week.
Yeah.
And what they're going to suddenly, like now,
I'm just wondering if they actually did everything right, like by the book, so to speak. Could it actually work?
I think now it's now. I think to me now it's too late, and because wrestling's not popular enough.
Yeah.
Now here's another thing, Mike. One of the reasons that wrestling is in my opinion not on kind of a downslide is the inability of a guy who for the last 20 years has made some incredibly untalented men into superstars in this industry. And Brutus Beefcake, look no farther, right? And there's so many people, but I mean, just on and on. We can do a list of guys that were in that company in the 80s and even in the 90s that were big stars that everybody knew that had no wrestling talent at all. And here we are now, and whether he's lost his touch, whether he's lost his confidence,
his mind.
Yeah, they except for Brock Lesnar, they have not made, and Kurt Angle, those are really the only two stars that they have made in the last 3 years, 4 years, 3 years.
Yeah, I think that has to be a huge disappointment when you look at that time frame. And, we can pick it apart about what's happened in the last couple of months that leads to all these problems, but I think you have to take that overall little bit larger view and say that what's happening now is that they're also paying for their mistakes of 2 years ago.
3 years ago. But you know what? The thing is, this is exactly what Brian and I used to say daily about WCW. When WCW was hot, you could have perpetuated because you had so much great young talent, except by the time you needed them to be someone, you'd already established them as not being top guys. And that's the same thing with WWE, is that, when they were sitting there rolling, and that's when you need to make your new talent, because now, it's a lot harder with not nearly as many eyeballs watching or caring to make a new superstar. Although Steve Austin, became a superstar at a low period in WWE, so it's not impossible.
Okay, but wait a minute. When Steve Austin became that superstar in WWE when they were at a downtime, the wrestling business overall was not as down as it is now. The WCW product,
that's true,
still had people coming to the dance on Monday nights with the remote control in their hands.
And they were going, and a lot of people were going back and forth. And you know what else? That 1997, which was the year that Steve Austin was made, even though the WWE ratings were not that good until, even for that whole year, they put out a phenomenal television product. It just took a while for it to catch on, and then, and then also Steve Austin had the advantage of the Mike Tyson angle.
Yeah, no question. And when you talk about guys coming into a promotion and guys really breaking out, now you look at what they're doing with Bill Goldberg today, and do you really have faith that the way that they're handling the Bill Goldberg arrival is going to mean business? I don't.
I don't either.
I've at least, I've seen it as they have not totally botched it yet.
No, it's not botched. I don't think I think it's only 2 weeks in. It's not botched at all. I'm just saying.
But I'm actually shocked that it's gone 2 weeks without being botched.
It almost was.
Yeah. I really expect it to be over like the first day. So the fact that it's been 2 weeks now is, at least, I don't know. I feel a little more confident about it, but I still know it will fail.
Brian, I just think that you will look back on this a month or two from now, and you will say, why did they bring him in the manner that they did? Because to me, we're 2 weeks into the Goldberg era, and to me, he's portrayed as just another guy on the roster. I think that the biggest mistake, as we'll have, our 2020 hindsight on this, is that they did not bring him in as an outsider, that they did not separate him from the pack, and I just think that that's why, at least my perception is, that the reaction to Bill Goldberg's arrival has been ho-hum to this point, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on last Monday night's rating. Let's see what happens tomorrow night.
Yeah, but I don't believe that the rating is going to be up substantially this week.
I don't either, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt because of the NCAA basketball game last week, and let's see where the public is going to speak this Monday, I think. And we're coming pretty close to that pay-per-view. I think it's, about 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks from today, yes.
Now, I think it's pretty clear that Vince is never going to do the outsider or invasion angle right. So I looked at it as like I said, I figured this would fail on day one. So the fact that it's lasted 2 weeks, I see as a positive. But
you're an optimistic guy.
That, I'm
okay, but Brian, when we used to talk about Bill Goldberg's arrival, and we talked about the big buy rate the first match would do, we're 2 weeks away from the first match. Do you really believe it's going to do any kind of a buy rate?
No.
There we go. So they've squandered that aspect of it already. Although part of that is the time. I think this is a bad time for wrestling. For him, if he had come 2 years ago, it would have been, 3 times as big as it is. Mike, real quick, why don't you tell everyone about this coming Wednesday, because actually during the show, you never did get a chance to talk about next week's show.
This Wednesday, April the 16th, we have what I'm anticipating pre-match as being one of the top bouts of the year for our pay-per-view show. It's going to be an NWA World Tag Title defense for Triple X, and I believe it'll be Elix Skipper and Christopher Daniels putting the titles on the line. Don't know about Low-Key's status, but I think he might. Is he still out of the country?
Low-Key's last match on his tour was yesterday, but he does have a neck injury.
Okay, but they will be putting the tag titles on the line against Jerry Lynn and Amazing Red, and we saw one hell of a match this past Wednesday, a 4-team elimination tag in our main event, and if that was any kind of an indication, if that was any kind of a taste of what we have in store for us, I think we're really looking to what's going to be one of the best X Division tag matches that we've had in a long time. And if I can just mention one other thing, Dave, this Wednesday we also started work on a pay-per-view event called Genesis. I don't have an exact airtime for you. I believe it'll be in the month of May, and it will be a specially priced pay-per-view that will be recapping the first 40-plus weeks, I guess, of NWA TNA, where the people out there that have not had the chance to sample our product can watch this 1-2-hour pay-per-view and find out what we're all about, get brought up to speed on so many of the major storylines, and I'm really thinking that in the month of May, that's going to be a huge help to bringing a lot of people's attention towards NWA TNA.
An email with a correct answer for the trivia question.
Do we?
He has 5 others who ran and the 4 who were elected.
Then let's see. How do we do this?
Good question.
Ira says it doesn't count because it's got to be a caller.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, he says you got to be a caller. So tell him he's got to call in.
Sorry, Randall, you got to call in.
Okay. Well, we're gonna start going to calls right now. And let's go because everyone's been holding for so long. Let's go to Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on?
Hey guys, I think I got the answer.
Okay.
It's Sasuke, Inoki, Anita, Hase, and the one that lost was Sayama.
Well, you got it. There you go. He's won.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, that wasn't as hard as last week's.
Oh, okay.
And my question that I have for you is, in watching the Piper Pit replays, especially the one with Frankie Williams, it made me remember back the days when basically all you saw on TV were squash matches with the jobbers. And my question for you, if you were to write a story on maybe just a fictional Hall of Fame of wrestling jobbers, who would be some of the great jobbers in your opinion that you enjoyed watching and would put in there? And also, since
most of the best jobbers were guys who ended up being main eventers later in their career, like Kurt Hennig. Because if you were really that good as a jobber, someone later is going to say, hey, and this guy's good, let's give him a push.
Yeah, I do remember a squash match with Eddie Gilbert and Kurt Hennig against
Eddie Gilbert was a very good jobber when he was early in his career, but most like Terry Taylor, most of the guys that I saw were going man, this job guy's really good. They in most cases usually ended up being wrestling stars later. The guys like Frankie Williams, the reason that they were always jobbers because they really weren't very good.
Yeah. Okay, and another question I have is, since ratings have gone down and buy rates have gone down, do you think that Vince will ever get in his head, maybe, hey, we're giving away too many of these great matches on TV for free, and that's why people aren't buying the pay-per-views?
But the thing is that ratings are going down, and they live and die by ratings. So when your ratings go down, the last thing you're going to do is go, our ratings are down, let's put on weaker matches. So I mean, like, if ratings were through the roof, I could see them going, hey, you know, our ratings are through the roof, but our pay-per-view buys are down. Maybe we shouldn't give away so much for free. But when ratings are down also, they've got to figure out, their number one priority is, like, how do we get these ratings better, you know, and so we're not going to have weaker matches by doing, you know what I'm saying? It's not in their mentality right now.
Okay.
We're going to go to Justin in Oil City, Pennsylvania. Justin, what's going on?
What's going on, Dave?
Not too much.
Okay, I was wondering, you and Brian, I don't know if he can hear me or what, but which match did you like better? Jericho and Michaels from Mania or Michaels and Hunter from SummerSlam?
Wow. Let me think about this. Michaels and Hunter from SummerSlam, I like better. I'll ask Brian, which did you like better, Michaels' match with Hunter at SummerSlam or the match with Jericho at Mania?
Probably SummerSlam. I haven't watched Mania on tape yet, but I would say SummerSlam.
Okay, so we're in agreement on that one.
Interesting.
I just got a chance to start watching the WrestleMania tape, by the way, because I never got to see it after I was there. And the crowd reactions really did not come across on tape like they were in the building.
It rarely does.
Yeah, it was so big, and it was, you know, the roof was probably open about 10 feet maybe, and I think that might have had a little to do with it. I know nothing about acoustics, but yeah, totally different.
Yeah, Justin, what did you think?
I'm going to have to go with Michaels and Jericho. Like, the Hunter match was more of a novelty because it was the first time we saw him wrestling, you know, in 5 years. But the Jericho match, you know, more wrestling.
It was more a wrestling match. It was more of a brawl.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Sean sold his back more in the Mania match, but he didn't sell it that much in either one towards the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were both really good.
They were both excellent matches, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. I tell you, the one thing with Michaels is that, you know, I mean, everybody was worried if he came back, you know, I mean, he's not what he was, but on the big matches, I mean, he's still, you know, I mean, he's still as good as almost anyone.
Mm-hmm. Can you safely say, you know, the XFL must have broken Vince's brain?
The timing makes it look that way, doesn't it? I mean, yeah. It's what it seems like to me. Again, I'm not with Vince, talking to him daily, so I don't know, you know, what happened. The last time I talked to Vince was after the XFL, and he seemed pretty darn smart to me, and that's why everything that's happened just confuses me so much.
This is a funny story.
Yeah, what?
The last time you talked to Vince?
Yeah, the last time I talked to Vince, he had all those great ideas, and then none of them happened.
Oh, the invasion?
That's right, how to do the invasion. Oh, yeah. But, I mean, yeah. I mean, he did not seem like a guy who lost his mind the last time I talked to him. He seemed like a very smart, confident promoter, and I don't know what happened, but something surely did.
Because just in the last...
Maybe it's your fault.
How's it my fault?
I don't know. He was smart last time you talked to him, and look at him now.
All right.
Well, you want me to go ahead?
Justin, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, well, just 4 horrible decision-making stories just came out in the last week with, you know, they're bringing back Nash, and I assume he's going to pin Hunter in the 6-man, and they're going to headline in May.
I would assume that you're right.
Okay. And then they wanted to lay out Goldberg on week 2.
Yeah, that was a scary one.
They're going to bring in Sting, apparently. At the same time, they're bringing in all the other old people.
Yeah?
And, you know, apparently keeping Undertaker super strong is more important than getting Cena ready to headline the next pay-per-view. What?
I have no explanation for that one because, boy, I mean, I heard about it, but I was shaking my head when I read about it on Tuesday night, and then watching it, I was shaking my head the whole match. The whole match, I'm going like...
This must have been Undertaker and Cena.
Yes, Brian's not even hearing the conversation, and he knows what's going on.
You're Dave.
I don't... Yeah, I don't understand it at all. I mean, I can tell you, their thought was Cena's getting a 1-2-3 at the end, and getting a 1-2-3 on the Undertaker is so important that makes him a world title contender. But to me, watching that match, I don't think it...
Now that it doesn't work that way, I mean, seriously, how many guys have gotten that fake win over somebody, and it's meant nothing?
Yeah. You know, if he got a real win, you know, if he really beat Undertaker on his own, it would have meant a lot.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been huge.
Because nobody ever does.
Yeah. So.
You can only think of...
But that did not happen. It took 4 men.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just scared I'm going to end up as one of those people who still subscribe to The Observer but don't actually watch wrestling anymore.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who do that now.
So So I've heard.
Yeah. I mean, I get letters from them all the time. It really scares me when people renew and they just go, I don't watch wrestling anymore. And I'm going like, oh, well, I mean, hey, I'll write about history. What the hell? I mean, it's fun.
Well, it's fun to read too.
Yeah.
God bless you, Dave. We'll see you later.
Okay, thanks very much, Justin. Okay, do we have Frank up? We do not have Frank up. Okay, we are going to go to Brandon in Baton Rouge. Brandon, what's going on?
Not much, Dave. I was just wondering why they didn't go ahead and declare Cena Taker a casket match. I mean, it would have only meant another 4 guys.
Oh, that one from like 10 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Well, at least that one there was a reason for it, for doing it the way they did. Because the whole thing, that casket match that he lost when he took off, like, what it was, like 9 months off after that Royal Rumble. I mean, the whole idea was to build something so big that when he came back, it would be huge. And actually, when he came back with Yokozuna, it wasn't that huge. But this match, the idea of this match was to get John Cena ready for a pay-per-view main event in 2 weeks. And boy, it didn't do that.
At least we don't have to worry about
when he died.
Undertaker when he comes back.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be signing Brian Lee anytime soon.
Okay, but my actual question...
I shouldn't have said that. I wish I did not say that, because every time I think something like that, it happens anyway.
My actual question is, how long has Nathan Jones actually been wrestling? I know he was at the Pride show in '97. The WWF's been after him since 2001. But how can someone this bad be in the business so long and actually get a good contract besides how he looks?
Well, it's because of how he looks. Okay, now I saw his second match, so I'm thinking that was about 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. In UPW. So he's been wrestling for 2 years. But you got to remember, I mean, he has done, like week tours for 01 and a couple of week tours for WWA, but he doesn't have a lot of ring time.
Like they were weak?
Yeah, 1 week. Yeah, he's done like 1 week tours here and there. So he doesn't have that many matches under his belt, and this is the first time he's been wrestling regularly. But I mean, you need, and it depends on the person. Kurt Angle needed a year. Most guys need 3 or 4 years of working really consistent before they're ready. And, they saw that body and they rushed it, and that was a big mistake. We knew it was a big mistake. It's Vince. He saw the body. He got freaked out. He go, I found my new next superstar. But the day of a guy, because he's 6'10" and has a good body, walking in and the fans accepting him because he looks so awesome, that day's over. You've got to be able to produce at least to a certain degree. 15 years ago, if Nathan Jones would have come along, he would have been a superstar. Just based on his physical appearance, as green as he is. But it's a different day now.
Well, I also have another question. I know that Nathan Jones is about 37. Rico Constantino's, 42? And they didn't...
I think 41, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't even want to put him on TV because they said he was too old, and yet they're giving Nathan Jones this big push because of his body.
Well, it's always been like that. And with Rico, Rico came at the wrong time. I mean, one of Rico's biggest problems was he was Jim Cornette's star pupil at a time when certain people on the writing team had a grudge against Jim Cornette. So it was kind of like, let's humiliate his star pupil. And Rico never recovered from it. And, because Rico's not tall, Vince never looked at Rico and just go, aha, this guy's going to be anything. He just sees a guy who's not tall and he's no bigger than anyone else and he's old and, he's kind of fun. He's got a comedic part about him, so we'll put him in this funny role, and now he's dead. So, what the hell?
Well, I don't think he's quite dead, but
I do.
He's still showing signs of life while being first pair with Billy and Chuck and then with 500-pound warning or whatever you want to call him this week.
Yeah.
He's still got some life. He gets a lot of heat at house shows and stuff. It's just...
Yeah, but he gets no exposure at all. He gets no interview time. He's treated so badly, compared to his talent.
Yeah, I know, and it's a shame because I've actually seen him do the role model gimmick in OVW. That's some hilarious stuff right there, and he's just not getting a chance to do any of it.
Yep, I know. It's very frustrating.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, Dave. I'll go ahead and let you go.
Okay, thanks very much, Brandon. Frank.
Yes?
Are you there?
I am.
We got Frank Shamrock here, former UFC light heavyweight champion, middleweight champion, whatever the division was called when it was 205. When you were there, I guess it was middleweight then, right?
Yeah, it was called, I think it was middleweight.
Now it's light heavyweight, who just a couple of weeks ago, first fight in a couple of years against Brian Pardo in Lemoore, California. And now that you're a couple of weeks away from that, what did you think when you got hit in the nose? I guess that's the first thing I got to ask you. Was that a wake-up, or was that like...
No, well, I was just more surprised that he moved that fast and punched me in the nose.
Yeah. I mean, once you were down there, you finished him off awfully quick.
Yeah. And I just saw the fight yesterday for the first time. And, I was surprised he moved that quick.
Yeah.
No, it didn't really hurt. He just punched me in the nose, but... And then, then he took me down, so... But while he was taking me down, I was like, he's really strong. He's going to get me down. So I just sort of went down.
Yeah.
Did you have a flashback to watching the Sakuraba fight?
No.
Nothing that bad?
It didn't, like, I got a really hard head, and I take a shot really well. So I was just, like, thinking to myself, damn, I can't believe he punched me so quickly. Because it was more a total surprise than, damage to my brain, I think.
What type of longevity do you think, like, we're going to look back and the mixed martial arts, the one thing with the mixed martial arts is from day one, it has been a total learning experience for everyone who's a fan of it, for the participants in it, because what you were doing in your first fights and how you were trained for your first fights is entirely different from what you're doing now and what the sport is now. And, for newcomers who weren't around, say, 9 years ago when you started, I mean, kind of give us a quick evolution of, your training and what you looked for. Because when you were, looking at Brian Pardo across the ring as compared to the guys you were, doing pancrase with in the first year of your career, it's just a different game pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, it was different, and, the rules were different, too. So it was more of an athletic match as opposed to a beatdown session. Everyone knew the techniques and stuff. But now it's just very different. Yeah, the level of athletes and the lifespan. Lifespan, I think, is about 5 to 7 years of going hard in the MMA sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
No. And then part of the problem with that is that it takes a while to become a star, and almost, from a marketability standpoint, at about the point you become a star, you're declining from your peak, or maybe you're just hanging on, or maybe you got a year of it or something, and the other thing is the nature of the money, as we've seen, and, Tito Ortiz is a perfect example, and with you as well, that when you become a star, you start looking elsewhere because you kind of go like, God, this is really, really hard, and the money isn't that huge.
Yeah. That's true.
Now, what's your thoughts as far as Tito Ortiz in pro wrestling, just as an example?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, it sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't see wrestling bringing him in. He's not skilled in wrestling.
Yeah.
It's just wrestling is so evolved so much as well.
Yeah.
You need the equal of all those parts. I don't think he has it. He's a good fighter. He's a great fighter. But not in wrestling, I don't think.
Now, we had a caller before you got on the air and was asked about your relationship with Ken and, where that thing started in you. How old were you when you first met Ken?
I met Ken when I was 14. 14, yeah. And I just went to the Shamrock Boys Ranch, and he came back and was visiting from college. That's when I first met him. And
you've had your, kind of ups and downs with him and things over the years?
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a, share of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we were never, close, like brothers you spend your whole life with.
But
different,
But he was the one who got you involved in fighting pretty much, right?
Yes. Oh, most definitely, yeah.
Yeah, now, how did that all come about?
Well, in 1994, I wasn't really, I was just hanging out with some college and was really bored. And Bob Shamrock said I need to get a job. He said I had to do something. And Ken was doing the pancrase at that time. And I went in and tried out. I tried out for the team, and I made it, and then Ken trained me for about 8 months. And
then you had your first fight. No, you were trained a lot in Japan as well, right?
Yeah. After that, I went to Japan for 2.5 months, and I trained over there.
How was that training like, and how would you compare the training that you had in Japan and the effectiveness of it as compared to what you would train a young guy with today?
Well, I don't know. I think the idea was the same. They were highly evolved in the ideas and the techniques, but the intention and the technique have changed now that the rules have changed as well. But I would train people the same way. The whole Japanese system messes you all up because you have to follow this strict regiment,
which gets in the way of like the regular stuff.
Yeah.
So, but you know, it's hard training and scientific training, especially for real fighting, because you're, you know, trying to beat people down or pull their limbs off or turn their brain off or something like that. So you got to be very serious about it.
Now, you've seen in this country, you know, UFC go from, you know, when it started, it was kind of this freakish thing, but it had a lot of popularity. Then, for political reasons, it went down. It kind of lost its exposure. Now it's kind of coming back. But at the same time, everyone's got different ideas of, you know, what it's going to take to get it to a level of, I don't know, I want to say like boxing, but, you know, perhaps, you know, like mainstream visible sport, you know, are there things in there? Because, you know, sometimes, you know, we'll watch like a Pride show or even a UFC show. And there's certain tactics, and you know, like whether it's like the ground and pound where they do the elbow to the eye, you know, like to cut the guy up, and at times I'm thinking like, you know, a lot of what goes on, like the submission fighting, the boxing, the kickboxing, you know, that's there in all sports, in all combat sports, and people will accept that. But some of that stuff, you know, sometimes I wonder is like, will the main, you know, the people who don't like it when they see the one thing, or what are the things that you see where you kind of go, God, you know, it's like. These are the things that may be keeping us from getting to the next level.
Well, I mean, I definitely the elbows and the forearms to the eyes and cutting around there, because that just doesn't look good. And you know, any kind of soccer kick to the head is just not good.
Yeah, that one's
we always joke about that, but it's just not socially acceptable. Although it's very effective.
Now, what about the knees? Because the knees are turning into like a major weapon now.
They are, and you know, I don't know what their longevity is either. They're one of the best weapons. They're so devastating.
Now, you won a fight, and I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it Incident away where you won with the knee?
Yeah. Incident was a big knee.
Yeah. And when we were watching the last Pride, there were a couple of fights that ended with a knee, with a big knee. Now, one of the things, and you know, you've been lucky, you haven't lost a fight in, I think it's like 7 years now.
Yes.
But
on a good roll.
You're on a real good roll, but I don't think that we're going to be seeing too many 7-year winning streaks.
No.
I think it's impossible. I mean, for anyone who's going to fight like top guys twice a year, there's just, you know, we watched that last Pride. There's too many, you know, the greatest fighters in the world. There's just ways that you get caught.
Yeah, and they don't last long. So, at any given time with any injury, you know, you can lose, and then you got to start over.
Yeah,
that's where our sport is flawed. You know, because we're always wanting the best, but the best, they're only there for a short period of time.
And that's right. And the other thing is the injury thing. Now, how physically demanding is it for you to get in your best shape possible? Yet at the same time, you know, you've had your injuries from 10 years, so it's kind of like, you know, you're, you know. But if you go into a fight, even at your level, if you go into a fight now, even, you know, against anyone of any caliber, and you're not in your best shape, you'll be in trouble.
Yeah, you could lose.
Yeah, you could lose, and it's like, so you got to be in your best shape cardio, and at the same time, to get in your best shape fighting. You know, you can do cardio all day long to get in your best shape fighting. You got to fight.
Yeah, you got to spar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and things just break.
Yeah, I mean, you've had the injuries the last couple of years. You know, you had 2 fights. You had 2 fights canceled with the leg and with the rib cage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's the bad part. I wish there was some kind of padding or something they could put on that would, you know, make that life expectancy longer so you can entertain longer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now, the other thing with the fighting is that, and it's the same thing with the pro wrestling and with boxing, is some guys are really good, but they don't connect with the public because they don't have the right personality.
Yeah.
And to be a superstar in this business, and it is a business, I mean, you have to have that whole package. You have to be able to talk. You have to be able to communicate. You have to have a good look, and you have to be able to win your fights.
Yeah.
and look impressive winning your fights, not, you know, kind of boring winning fights.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's better. You know, one of the things, I mean, I think in most cases, it's better to lose a great fight than win a bad fight.
I agree with that.
Now, as a fighter, though, when you're going in there, and your mentality is to win and to not get hurt, and at the same time entertain the audience, the thing that they're looking for is 2 guys beating the hell out of each other, hurting each other. I mean, what are you thinking as far as, I mean, and you know, you can't be sitting there, like Sakuraba at the last Pride. Sakuraba was sitting there and he was thinking, I'm going to win this fight, I'm going to entertain the people, and because of that mentality of entertaining, that's why he lost the fight, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a balance you have to walk, because you have to make yourself a star, you know, in a short period of time. So you got to have the package and you got to work it.
Yeah.
You got to get out there and work it. It's just like wrestling. It's like everything else. and you get out there, you sell your product, and if you're boring, I mean, if you're a Pat Miletich or something, then, I mean, he's a great fighter, but no one wants to watch him fight.
Yeah.
Lewis is a great fighter, but no one wants to watch him fight. He has no personality.
Yeah.
He's got no, aggression. It's like, you don't want to see that. People want the package, especially these days.
Yeah.
And they want it delivered to their doorstep.
Yeah. Now, what's your future look like?
My future? I don't know. I'm getting old. I still enjoy training, so I'll probably do a couple more fights. But, I've got a couple lying on some movies and entertainment stuff. I'm going to try to swing myself in that direction.
Any specific time frame for another fight?
No.
Okay.
It'll definitely be 6 months.
6 months or so?
Yeah, because my getting ready for a fight is just a traumatizing event that stops my life and everything else around me, and just breaks me down so much that.
How was going back, training really, really hard? How was that compared to, I'm not saying you never had it easy and you always trained a little bit, but it was very different from what you've been doing the last year and a half, let's say 2 years.
Yeah. Well, it's so different because you can't do anything.
Yeah.
I come home, I ice, I elevate, I stretch, I eat, and then I take a nap so I can go back and train 100%. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the injuries and the doctor bills and the extracurricular time that it takes to keep the body up and everything else it's retarded. You have to be paid millions of dollars just so you can become.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Frank, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And we'll be talking to you very soon. We're going to go to Chris in Savannah. Chris, what's going on?
Not much, Dave. Brian, how y'all doing? Well, I guess you can't hear me, Brian, but how you doing, Dave?
I'm doing okay.
I wanted to ask you a couple things. I'm to the part in Broken Hearts where she's just discussed her the fall and the outcome of it, and I was thinking about a couple things, and I was thinking back to Bret Hart on Off the Record and how he was saying that he didn't really like Martha's book and how it was only a step above, or maybe it was on your show.
It was actually on this show that he said that.
Was it on this show?
Yeah.
Yeah, that he said it was only a step above Diana's.
Yeah, that surprised me when he said that because Diana's book was terrible and Martha's book was one of the best wrestling books out there, I thought.
I don't want to slight Mick Foley in any way, but her book was so well written. It's really good, and although she might have said Bret, although when he looked out for me now we don't speak much anymore. I really don't think she had one bad word to say about.
No, she was very nice about Bret.
And what do you think? From your personal experience, you obviously know Bret more than I do, and many people do. Do you think maybe the resentment comes from the fact that she doesn't have such glowing reviews of the Hart family, although it might be an accurate...
Well, okay. A lot of the members of the Hart family that she didn't like, Bret wouldn't say good things about either.
Right, that's exactly what I was thought, so then I was trying to wonder where his justification from the fact that he didn't think it was a good book came from.
I think that Bret and Martha knew different Owens to an extent in that the Owen Hart that went on the road did not hate wrestling. I think that it's the idea that Owen hated wrestling and he thought wrestling was beneath him, and I think that Bret saw Owen as someone who, obviously Owen would not have been as good a wrestler as he became if he didn't like wrestling to a degree. Did he like his family more? Yes. But, I don't think that he hated professional wrestling, and,
right.
Believe me, I know he hated aspects of professional wrestling. I know he hated some of the stuff that it became. But actually going in the ring and performing, I think he probably liked that a lot because he was pretty darn good.
And he had too much fun.
Yeah, exactly.
1990 to 95, Owen was... probably the best.
Well, before that, Owen was one of the best from about 6 weeks into his career.
Yeah.
He learned it, but he picked it up quick, and he was the star in Stampede Wrestling, real fast, just because, he had the name, he had the look, and he was, had the ability. But, I think that might be it. I've never talked to Bret at length as far as, Martha's book, when I brought it up on the show, it was not the response I expected because, to me, it was one of my, Broken Hearts is one of my favorite wrestling books, and I think is a must for people to read, and most wrestling fans haven't read it, although it's sold very well in Canada.
Yeah, it's a really well written too. It's well edited, and I think it gives really, aside from the fact that she really does speak negatively about the fact that Owen, hated wrestling, which
and I think she let her own feelings towards wrestling influence. I think another thing also is that I think that there's a feeling that she was not honest with her own upbringing in that. She admits going to wrestling because it was a way to meet Owen, but there's other people who say that she was already a wrestling fan at first and then grew to hate wrestling, and she won't admit that she actually liked wrestling at first. People who knew her from way back. So, little things like that to the people who knew her best.
Well, how would she have known about Owen if she didn't know anything about wrestling?
Well, it's
she said in the book that and I don't know.
It was a high school romance.
Yeah, and that she'd met him walking through her high school.
Yeah, well, they went to different schools, but they were like a high school romance.
Right.
Yeah, because because he was a wrestling stud. It was actually, I think he was doing amateur, and he was like the stud of his high school, and I think that they were playing against Martha's high school. And she saw him in the stands, and they started talking. I think that, but then she started going to the pro matches because Owen would be selling the programs and stuff every Friday night.
Right. I also wanted to ask you, and I do not want to take anything away from the legend of Roddy Piper. That's not my place. But do they actually plan on putting Piper in the ring? Because
yes,
the fact that his hip could swell up to the size of a mango, and his shoulder is in, no condition to do anything, and the man has no knees, and the fact that thing hanging over his belt might hit him in the knees and cause him to trip over in the ring. It's just, Roddy's not in good shape.
There's a history of wrestling of putting guys in the ring that aren't in good shape. A lot of older guys that they think can still draw. And Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper in WCW, when they first had their matches, they did very well at the box office. The matches weren't any good, and the Age in the Cage is like a legendary bad match. But even that did a good buy rate. It's box office.
It was also Starrcade, Dave.
What?
It was also Starrcade.
Yeah, but hey, that was one of the big successes of as WCW went up. But there's a lot of people who, that 1984 period was such a big period in wrestling that they think because it was so big for them that it's still big. And, it's 19 years ago, and there are not that many fans from 19 years ago still around. And, I don't know. But they're grasping at straws. They're looking for something. They know that they don't have the young guys over. And, Roddy Piper's a very, very famous name, and Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper has a great history of drawing at certain points, over the last 20 years.
Okay. Was the convention that TNA and UFC attended successful, or did they branch out and make any contacts, or was it just pretty much, they
had a cocktail party that were each one that was going on at the exact same time, so they kind of like split the audience, so to speak. But they made contacts. I don't know that any TV deals are going to come from it for either side. Obviously that's what they're looking for is, more support in the cable industry and try to get some sort of a TV deal. They both need one.
And one last question, Dave. Something divine must have occurred to have Glenn Gilberetti have a good match. What's the meaning of that?
What, with AJ Styles?
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's your answer. Although, I thought he looked better than AJ in that match. Maybe I don't know. He's been a lot better in the last month. In everything. Interviews, everything. Disco, yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, thanks for your time. I'll let you catch another caller.
It's amazing. Brian cannot even hear this, and he knows what we're talking about. Let's go to John in Chicago. John, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Wondering now about the main event situation now, the top guys, with Angle out, with Undertaker out. I'm wondering if I'm correct into thinking that Triple H's next feuds are with Nash and
yeah, you're correct.
Goldberg.
Yeah, you're correct.
So all that racial stuff, all the stuff that went into Booker T was basically for nothing then.
In hindsight, yes. When they were doing it, that wasn't the idea, but things changed.
it's just so ridiculous. And I have the feeling then that for the 6-man tag team match on the pay-per-view, it's either going to be Jericho, Booker T, or Flair who are going to take the pin.
I would think it'd be Triple H from Nash. That would be the logical thing.
You would think Nash would take the pin because
Nash would pin Triple H. That's what I would think. Yeah, that's if that's where they're going.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering. I read the chat. I read the interview that he had on WWE.com and everything like that about. Well, these guys have to get over. These guys have to push themselves and everything. I'm just wondering.
Well, that's I hear veterans say that to me all the time, right. and every one of them had a veteran that gave it to them. If you know what I'm saying, at one point. I mean, there's some guys just get over, but most of the time, some superstar works with you, and by working even with you or even putting you over, they make you a new star, whether it's Wahoo with Ric Flair or Mick Foley and Austin with Triple H. And I don't see, Triple H has not done that with anyone.
But, this is...
Oh, come on, Jeff Hardy?
That's a prime example. That's a perfect example right there. Jeff Hardy, he killed the guy's career.
Booker T.
Yeah. Booker T.
Rob Van Dam, Kane.
Yeah, don't forget him.
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't understand is if you're going to buy this argument, Triple H, that you're, or just even to the management people that this, you've got to be proven talent. Look at the ratings just from last year, from WrestleMania.
Oh yeah.
They were averaging around a 4, like a 5 almost.
They hit some 5s last year, yeah, right around this time.
Like aiming down towards the 3s, and you're saying, not even just like a little bit of variety, just a little. I mean, I was watching some tapes that I have from just Raw in 2000 and SmackDown in 2000. The shows were so much crisper then. Going from segment to segment, it seemed like you couldn't you couldn't stop to catch your breath. Mm-hmm. It seemed they were popping for women's matches, with Lita and Trish. I mean, and they were just relatively new stars. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the crowd were so much more into it. It's just like,
well, that's what happens when you got a hot product.
And also, they were interested in in bringing out new characters and just looking at a storyline like Lita and Dean Malenko when they were doing their little seduction storyline. It's like 100 times better than any of the stuff they're doing now.
Well, there were a lot of people who didn't like that storyline when it was happening.
But it was so much crisper. It showed a different side to a new character.
That's true. That's true.
And it was done with tact. It wasn't,
tact? I don't know about that, actually. I thought that was pretty overt at certain points.
That's true, but it wasn't as bad as Sable. It wasn't as bad as the...
Oh, no, it was not as bad as Sable, you're right. And we are going to go to Kyle in St. Paul. Kyle, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, what's up?
Not too much. What's happening?
Hey, did you see the Bob Sapp fight yet?
Yes, I did. I saw it a couple days ago.
What'd you think?
It's exactly as it was described. He got hit in the eye, and he kind of decided it was time to go down. It wasn't that great shot that everybody kind of...
Just Bob Sapp?
Yeah, the Bob Sapp fight. It wasn't that great shot, but, I mean, he broke his eye bone, so it's, he may have... In fact, I think he was going in today to see if he was going to need surgery tomorrow.
Right.
So, but, yeah, great atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the one thing about that whole night, the way the TV built up to the fight, and then just the atmosphere around those two... you get these two superstars walk into the ring, and it just seemed like a real big deal. And for the minute or 2 minutes that it was on, it was pretty, two recognizable guys. People knew what they were fighting for, and it was a big fight.
Yeah, absolutely. It does look like it'd be fun. You want to live through stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I am in the middle of reading Broken Hearts, actually, so I can tell you...
You are as well. Okay.
Yeah, I am. And the thing with Martha Hart, when I read that, it made no sense to me either, because what she said happened is that she was in her school walking down the hall, and Owen was there outside the wrestling room. And he said later on when she talked to him that he was there, practicing with the guys, which honestly, I never saw happen in my high school where a kid from Central came down and, practiced with our football team or anything like that. So I was fishy when I read that, and now to hear what you say, that seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So in that, it's minor stuff, but the people who know it best, that's what kind of, I think, unnerved. And Brett knows every story. I mean, he's got he's got an incredible memory, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe to him it's just like, it's the same as, the Diana stuff, which was just like totally way out there, and it's, so I think that maybe that explains it. I don't know. I mean, but to me, when you read most of that book, most of the stuff in that book is pretty darn accurate.
Yeah, you got to read the book. It's fantastic. I know you're out of time. I'd love to talk about it some other time.
Okay, great, Kyle. Yeah, I'd love to talk about it some more as well. We are totally out of time. I want to thank Brian, Mike Tenay, Frank Shamrock for doing the show, and I want to remind everyone also, next Sunday night, we're going to have Raven as a guest, so that should be really entertaining because it always is going to be. It's like a night off for me because he'll take the ball and run with it, and I can't stop him. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for joining in. We'll be back next Sunday. You listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.